A lot of us are cultured to respect and admire doctors, medical professionals. And, that's fine. It's a noble profession in many ways. Doctors, nurses, medical assistants, they all contribute to this system of medicine that we have in the United States. And as a quote unquote first world country, we have, some of the best medical facilities in the world. But like all institutions, we have to have an honest discussion about racism going on at the doctor's office. And, there's a frustration that I hear a lot when it comes to, whether it be hospitals or at the doctor's office, is that the pain of a Black person is just not taken seriously. And, maybe there's a lot of people who can relate to that. I know I can. And I'm sure you've heard of this long-standing belief that Black people somehow feel less pain than their white counterparts. I've been to clinics in my neighborhood growing up, and doctor's offices where nobody wants to explain anything to you, and everyone seems upset at your presence. I don't know, maybe I just didn't have the right insurance, or maybe you didn't have the right insurance. Maybe you grew up in a poor neighborhood, and that's just how all the clinics in poor neighborhoods are. But if you ever wondered why your parents never liked going to the doctor, maybe it wasn't because they're ignorant or because they're stubborn. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that Black women are 2 to 6 times more likely to die during childbirth than their white counterparts. And I'm really, really disturbed by this dynamic. And it has a lot to do with the elephant in the room in the medical community with regard to this science of this sort of racial science that exists in the world that we would think in the year 2020 that we got rid of, but we didn't. That race science still exists, this idea that, Black people have thicker skin and they feel less pain, and a lot of what ends up going on in the doctor's office or in the hospital is a reflection of how we as a society feel about Black people. And we have to be honest about that. We have to be honest and frank about the reality of the medical institution. It's not just enough to say that it's not just enough to say that our healthcare system is broken, and whether you believe that an incoming president can fix it, whether you believe that the current administration didn't do anything with healthcare, whether you want to blame Congress, regardless of who you want to blame, we have to admit that our healthcare system is not only broken, severely broken, for what is supposed to be the wealthiest nation in the world, but it is also very, very racist. And that's what I want to talk about on this episode of Race Wars, the Critical Conversations podcast. Yes, we have somehow made it to episode 5 and nobody has told me to shut up yet. Welcome to Race Wars, the Critical Conversations podcast, and you're listening to me, your guy, hosting once again. And this episode is going to be special in some ways. I don't know. I have this passion about healthcare, and I'm very interested in why the healthcare system is so broken. And I've considered it in aspects of the law. When you're talking about the Affordable Care Act and the passage of the Affordable Care Act, and the individual mandate and all of that stuff. You can study that from a legal perspective, but I think what's even more interesting is considering how broken our healthcare system is and how racist it is, which is what we're going to focus on this episode. And I'm here opening up my Kindle because I want to recommend this book. I've been reading it, and it's interesting. In the middle of the pandemic, I was reading this book, and then I kind of stopped. You know, like anything else that's going on during the pandemic, you think that you're going to be really ambitious and you're going to do X, Y, and Z. You know, there's some people probably think that they're going to become a superstar over the pandemic. A lot of people think they're going to be really productive, but it's interesting. I read this article in the New York Times, not to get too far away from the topic at hand, that talks about, you know, stop punishing yourself and forcing yourself to try to do all these things during the pandemic and just live. Because we're living in unprecedented times, and there's just no need to try to torture yourself and to make yourself think that you need to be super productive just because you have, quote unquote, all this free time. I mean, we're all grieving, we're all mourning. Everybody knows somebody who has either died from this virus or has gotten very sick. So we're not all in a state of happiness right now. There's no real state of joy. And this idea that you're going to put your nose to the ground and be super productive and ignore the trauma, I don't know, that's kind of toxic for me in itself. But anyway, I pulled up this book. It's a New York Times bestseller. I really want you to check it out after this episode. It's called An American Sickness: How Healthcare Became Big Business and How You Can Take It Back. So that's book number 1 I recommend. The other book that I recommend is somewhere here, buried under all the garbage that I have in this room. Let me see. Yes. And all my notes are here. You know, I was such a good reader. Reproducing Race: An Ethnography of Pregnancy as a Site of Racialization. I think that this book is more in line with the topic. It is written by Professor Kiara Bridges, my favorite law professor when I was in law school, when she taught at BU. She's moved on to UC Berkeley, and I wish her the very best, but she was my all-time favorite professor of critical race theory and all things race when I was in law school. And she read this amazing book that talks about pregnancy and birth and the role of race in the medical setting. And it talks a lot about how racial stereotypes kind of govern the body of poor women of color, and how these racial stereotypes really affect the type of medical care that they receive. You know, this notion of, for example, that there's a welfare queen. And remember, back in the 80s and 90s, whenever it was, when everybody was talking about the welfare queen, and we know who they were really trying to talk about. They were, when you think of a picture of a welfare queen, they're trying to get you to think of a black woman who is stealing from the system, taking all the benefits. She's got 10 children. She never worked a day in her life. And that's the caricature of what they want you to see when they talk about the quote unquote welfare queen. But that's just not reality. But unfortunately, the media and the political powers, the ones that wanted to make us believe in this stereotype of a welfare queen, very much impacted the way black women in particular received medical treatment or a lack of medical treatment, because there's this belief that, oh, she's just trying to get away with benefits, and she's just coming in here with her Medicaid card and getting over on the government and all that stuff. And it was just never true. It was never true. Poor Black women are just trying to survive through all the trauma that has been given to them by this American system, by this Western system, by how the world treats Black women. That's what it is. It's survival. And I have this wonderful, wonderful interview coming up with this powerful Black woman, and she's going to talk a lot about what she's gone through. And I didn't want to do this without her. I didn't want to do this episode without her, because she is one person who I know very well. And, she talks a lot about the pain that she's gone through. And there's just so much suffering out in the world. And it's unfortunate that people have to go through this just because of the color of their skin. It's sad. It's sad that our society has been this way for so many years. And there's still people out there defending the system, defending the way things work. And you know what? Things work. And I'm gonna leave you with this token of wisdom. The systems that exist in this country, in the United States of America, in the Western world, they work exactly how they're supposed to work. Think about that. The systems that exist in this country work exactly how they're supposed to work. People talk about reform. People talk about change. You can talk about training. We have to train, we have to change, we have to get a new, there has to be a new person in the office, and then there'll be change. You can talk about change all you want. But the problem is, if we don't acknowledge that the systems that degrade people of color, Black people in particular, if we don't acknowledge that the system is working exactly the way it was meant to work, to denigrate our people, if that's not the first principle, if that's not the first thing that we acknowledge in our society, then we've done something wrong. In my opinion, we've done something wrong. But anyway, let me get off of my soapbox and let's move on. Coming up, we got a very special interview after this break. Yes, let's do it. Interview time. And I'm very excited for you guys to hear what this woman has to say. Let's do it. Take a brief break, pay some bills. Well, not really. Coming back real soon. Hello, lovely listeners. This is Mike here. It is my hope and desire that you are really, truly enjoying this podcast. And I want this to be an experience that is as interactive as possible. So if you have a question or response to anything you've heard on this episode, send me an email. What are you waiting for? TheRaceWarsPodcast@gmail.com. You know the email address already. Or send me a DM on my official Instagram account for this podcast and follow us at _race_wars_podcast. Don't forget to also interact with me on Facebook at facebook.com/TheRaceWarsPodcast. Let's talk. I'll be waiting for you. Hello, welcome everyone once again to Race Wars, the Critical Conversations podcast, and I'm here this evening with my friend Rhisa, who also goes by Negra Con Lyme. And I want to talk to her today about her experiences, the things that she's gone through to further help and enlighten us about this topic when it comes to the type of racism that we see in the doctor's office and by physicians, specifically with regard to Black women. And so I want to welcome you and I want to thank you for coming on and talking to me today.
No, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk about it. Well, kind of.
Yeah, no, I know these experiences can be tough to talk about, and it's your life story. It's what you've gone through, it's what you've dealt with, and the beautiful thing about it, in a way, is that you can help educate others through what you've gone through, so that hopefully nobody else will have to suffer the same way.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I was also like talking to someone. I don't know if you saw it recently, like quickly. Anyway, like someone kind of like stole my story, like this app.
That was the first thing I wanted to ask you about, because I did see that.
Yeah. So like, long story short, like this new app that deals with like chronically ill people kind of like ran with my story, and they kind of changed it. But they gave someone else the credit of my own story too, and like stole my picture, and it was weird. So like I spoke to them, and I'm like, "Oh, what's happening here?" And then they like backtracked. They're like, "Oh, we just wanted to like highlight black people and people of color." And I'm like, "Well, how are you highlighting and like helping if you're not even giving the right person the credit?"
Right.
So like that was like something that just happened too, and I'm just like. And I told them, I'm like, this is, for me to talk about this in general is like, it takes a lot of energy for me because it's kind of like reliving a lot of bad experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And like, they didn't seem to really get that. So like, I'm not even going to share my story with them because like they were just like, like their apology was super like not sincere either too. So it's just wild how like this has become like such a huge thing. Like I didn't realize like there were so many people going through the same thing. I've become kind of like this like unicorn where everybody's like coming to me to like be like this poster child to speak about and be like a representative, which I'm cool with. But at the same time, like people get a little bit disrespectful with it.
Yeah. I mean, I read the post. It was like, it was a non-apology that they sent to you.
Yeah, it wasn't even like, and then they didn't even say my name in the apology. So I'm like, was this even meant for me? Like, they didn't even address who I was. So it was just really bad.
Yeah.
I think they're just trying to save their brand at the end of the day. They didn't even really care.
Yeah. And they sent some of the same language that they sent to you to other people.
Right, because, oh my God, like, my husband was like, damn, you have some shooters there. Because, like, people I didn't even know, like, attacked them. And they sent, like, the same basic apology to, like, the whole, across the board. And then they found my phone number and they called me, which was kind of creepy.
Wow. The internet can be something else. Social media, it has its good and it has its bad. So for someone to come to your aid and help you like that, that's a beautiful thing because that should have never happened.
Yeah, like half the people, I don't even know them. They just follow me and, like, we've been through similar experiences and they were like, nah, this ain't happening. And I was like, wow. I was like, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, people have to be out there watching for this kind of stuff because it happens all the time. Brands, they want to enhance their brand and they'll do it by any means necessary, regardless of, thinking about that person and their story and what's ethical. And what they did was just not ethical at all.
Right. And I think like this year was like all, not that it's something new, but it's become, it's everyone's talking about racism and everything. Like everyone's trying to just be like, oh, like we support you, we support this and everything. But at the end of the day, it's like, why did you steal my content? Like it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
You were just trying to further your brand to say like you're inclusive, but you didn't be. like an extremely bad way.
Yeah. And I remember I was saying this. I was like, we got to be careful because there's going to be all these brands and all these companies that are going to jump on the racial justice bandwagon and profit.
Yep. Right, exactly. Yeah, they're like running with it. I'm like, all right, we get it. Like,
Yeah.
you don't got to be so extra about it.
And it's an issue of sincerity, too. Are these people even being sincere?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the way they approach it, I doubt it.
Right.
And I was like, man, if you guys, like, want to pay me for my time, you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard, like, crickets after that. So.
They don't want to pay.
They were like, I don't know about all that. Like,
oh, man. But, so talk to us about Lyme disease specifically, because it's something that I don't know a lot about. I've looked up some information, but it's not something I've heard a lot of people contracting. I know it has to do with ticks, but that's
right.
as far as my baseline knowledge goes.
Right. No, I mean, that was actually me too. It's weird because when I got diagnosed, which is pretty much like exactly a year ago this month, I had like no idea what the hell it was. I was like, wait, what? Like, I knew it was like something you get from ticks. And I was like, oh, I guess it's not that bad. And I know like your pets can get it, like, because they have like all this, like, you know, like when you see the commercials about tick prevention for your dog and stuff, like they're like, oh, it protects your dog from Lyme disease. So it's like more spoken about for like your pets and animals than it is for humans. But supposedly, like, CDC says about 30,000 people in the U.S. a year get it, but the testing is inaccurate, and most people aren't really being tested for it. So the numbers are somewhere around 300,000 in the U.S. a year. The thing with it also is, in medical school, they don't really teach about it. They teach the acute phase of Lyme disease, which is, say, like you go camping and you get bit by a tick, you get like that typical rash, which most people, a lot of people also don't get, so which makes it harder to diagnose. So, like, if you test positive for Lyme and you just got bit, you're probably gonna be okay if you get the correct antibiotics quickly. The issue with that is no one's really getting diagnosed on time. So with that, if you go a year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, that infection is going to cause all these other issues in your body, which you really can't heal at this point, because it's pretty much like you've let this infection just build up in your body over time, and you were never treated for it. So now that caused you to have all these other problems. So people usually say, like, oh, I have Lyme disease. Or they'll say, most people will say, like, I have chronic Lyme disease now, because you have literally all these problems that you really can't fix with the treatment that the CDC lists on their site. So, like, most people are like, oh, like, Lyme disease, like, that's great. Like, you take, like, a few weeks antibiotics and you're good to go. But that's not really the case anymore, because, like I said, no one's really being diagnosed on time. So now you got all these people who are, like, super sick, and these doctors don't know what to do about it because they don't really know anything about the disease. Yeah, so, like, that's what happens. So that with that, Lyme disease is the same bacteria as syphilis. So it's the same, like, spiral-shaped bacteria. So that bacteria can, like, drill into your muscles, your organs, the tissues in your body. So sometimes when you get tested for it, it'll say negative when it's really positive, because it hides so well in the body. And that's another problem, because the testing is like outdated. It's like 40-something years old, or maybe more than that. So there's like a lot of false negatives. And doctors only seem to go based on lab results. They don't like to get to like a root cause. They're like, oh, well, this lab says that, so that's it. Like they don't really do more investigating, which is a problem in medicine too.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you feel like shit, but your labs are great, so we don't know what to tell you. Like if you don't feel well, you are sick. And they don't seem to get that. Like they're just like, well, the test said this, so you're on your own, you know?
Yeah. That's such a sad thing in medicine.
Yeah, it's really bad because I've heard this story like a million times where people are like, I'm always in pain, I'm super like exhausted, like just walking to the corner, or like they have like these weird symptoms like me, like this year like my foot turned purple and I couldn't walk right, like, and then I was having trouble breathing, and then I was having trouble going up the stairs. Like I went from like working out like 5 days a week to like not being able to go up the stairs. I'm like, something's wrong, obviously.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we don't know what to tell you because your labs look great. So like they don't do more investigating when it comes to people who they don't really know what's going on.
Right. Yeah, I don't understand why they wouldn't do the due diligence. It just, for me, because I've had this experience too, where you go to the doctor's office and you find yourself, if you don't know what you have already, it's like they can't help you.
Yeah, and doctors don't like to be wrong. Mm-hmm. I noticed, like, they don't like to not know either, which I would respect more if they were like, wow, I'm caught here. Like, I don't know what's wrong, and just kind of like refer you somewhere else instead of like being like, no, you're fine. Or they either blame it on your weight, right? Or they blame it on like psychiatric issues. You're depressed. Well, like, yeah, I mean, if I'm sick for years and you're not helping me, I'm going to become depressed. Like that's right. Like obvious, right? I mean, if you're sick and you're not well, and nobody can help you, you're going to be a little sad. I mean, hello.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
But, yeah, like, so it's the same type of bacteria as syphilis. So, like, say, like, you have syphilis and they don't treat you for syphilis, it's going to cause other things to go wrong in your body. But for some reason with Lyme, they're like, oh, no, we don't know. We don't know anything. Like, that's not a real thing. And they deny it, too, which is a whole other topic. Like, they deny it exists, which is, like, another weird thing they do, which I'm kind of still, like, learning about that. So, I mean, I can, like, kind of tell you about it, but it's a very, like, weird community to be in.
Do you know why they're doing this?
So, I've read some books and I've like seen, there's a documentary, it's called Under Your Skin, if like you're interested. It's a really good documentary kind of explaining.
Where can I find that?
Lyme disease. I know it's on Vimeo for free. Okay. But yeah, supposedly like the bacteria that causes Lyme disease, which is called Borrelia, was supposedly created in a lab, which I mean, I feel like a lot of things were created in the lab, but that's my opinion. Mm-hmm. But supposedly it was created in a lab during a war, and it was used like as an experiment to make people sick. But it was made to make people sick and not kill you. It was like made to just keep you sick.
So it's like biological warfare, basically.
Exactly, yeah. Like it was made as that, and I don't know. There's like two different stories. One was that it was released on purpose to like, during war, and the other story was that it was leaked from a lab, and they don't want to own up to it. So I don't know. But when you go to the doctor, like I can't tell you how many times I've told, like you go to an appointment and they're like, do you have like any existing conditions? And I'll say like, yeah, I have Lyme disease. And like doctors are like, ha ha ha, no, you don't. Wow. Even though like I have lab results that will say that I do. And they'll be like, oh, that doesn't exist here. That's another one.
But how do they know that? Like, how do they know that?
I don't know. Like, I don't, like, at the beginning, I was like, is it me? Like, am I crazy? Or is there, that's why I, like, started trying to find more answers, because I was like, what is with the gaslighting? Like, what do you mean no?
Right.
Like if I told you I had cancer, would you be like, no, you don't? Right? Like,
Yeah, that just sounds
it's such
crazy
a
to me.
weird thing. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all. Like, they'll be like, no, that doesn't exist here. Or they'll say, like, you've been treated. Even though, like, I was, like, super sick still.
Yeah. And there's this phenomenon of telling black women in particular, you know, that they don't have pain that they have, and sort of downplaying
Oh,
their
yeah.
pain.
Oh, all the time, yeah. Because, I mean, there's still, like, textbooks that say that black people don't feel pain the way white people do. Like, there's still published textbooks out today in med school that will say that we have thicker skin and, what was it? Like, something with our nerve endings that we don't process pain the same way white people do. Like, a nurse actually sent me, like, a book that she was like, yeah, this is, like, still a thing.
Wow.
And she was like, I can't believe it's even, like, I can't believe it was 2020 and this is still a thing.
Yeah. It's incredible. So it's no wonder you go to the doctor's office and you don't get taken seriously, which is really, really frustrating.
Yeah, because, I mean, this started for me back when we were in school. It just, like, it started in 2009 for me. So, like, it was super subtle. Like, I would have, like, headaches and then dizziness. And then they couldn't figure out why I had that. And then they were sending me to, like, a whole bunch of specialists. I can't tell you how many specialists I went to in that year. Like, it was literally, like, every few weeks I was at a different specialist. And they were like, everything was fine. Like, we don't know. Nobody knows anything. And then, like, another year later, like, I had, like, these stomach issues. And then a year after that, I had muscle and joint issues. And then, like, after that, it was, like, weird things started happening to me. Like, my ankles would give out. And then I would have, like, weird panic attacks. Like, it was, like, such a long list of symptoms. And, like, nobody could figure it out. And this was, like, over the span of, like, pretty much 10 years. And I got diagnosed with, like, oh, they're like, you have major depressive disorder. Or you have fibromyalgia and, like, chronic fatigue syndrome. And I was like, that's not a diagnosis. Like, people are not just in pain for no reason. People are not just exhausted for no reason. Like, I was like, my life has completely flipped. So you're not going to tell me that this is normal. And that's really the reason why I finally got a diagnosis, was because last, like, April of, like, 2019, they were like, it's fibromyalgia and there's nothing you can do about that. And I was like, no. So I went to, like, I had, for a few years, I had actually given up with going to the doctor because I was, like, so annoyed. And then about a year and a half ago, I was like, I can't live like this. So I kept literally just seeing different doctors. And then finally one diagnosed me. And then the crazy thing was that the doctor that diagnosed me, when she gave me, like, the antibiotic cycle and I got so bad, like, I got so sick, she was like, oh, I don't know anymore. And then she was like, I already treated you. It was, like, so weird. I was like, wait a minute,
Wow.
what? Like, and she's like, you have to go to another specialist. And I was like, oh my God, I've been to, like, a billion specialists, girl. I can't do this.
It's the fact that they
And then
give up so easily.
Oh, I know. It's quick. Like, they're just like, oh, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I did my job, so I don't know. And like, when I was younger, like, I felt like I held doctors to, like, this such a high standard, you know, like, this regard. Like, they were, like, on a pedestal to me. And now, like, I can, like, it's like they're like a joke. Like, that's pretty much how I feel at this point. I'm like, the minute I have to go to the doctor, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah.
Like, my anxiety goes through the roof.
Yeah. It's no wonder that the black community doesn't trust doctors or doesn't like going to them.
Right. No, yeah, like, I totally understand those people now, because when I was younger, I was like, oh, you have to go to the doctor and, like, you know, like, get treatment or whatever you need. And now, like, I totally get the older generation was like, no, I'm not going to those doctors.
My father would say, "Oh, if I go to the doctor, they will find something wrong with me."
That's kind of true though. Like I'm not even mad at him for saying that because I kind of believe it now.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It does. Like medicine wasn't created for us.
Right.
That's the thing too. It's like we were guinea pigs, but it wasn't made for us.
We've
It's kind of
always
like
been used as
BMI and all the other
experiments.
crap.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you
It's
think
like for white men.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, yeah, it's basically just for white men. Like anybody else is kind of just screwed.
Yeah. How do you think the experience you had would have been if you were a white woman? You think it would have been different?
So I've like struggled with that because for this illness, majority of people, regardless of like race or sex, are still struggling. Like there's not many answers on this illness. If it was, we were to talk about like anything else, like cancer or another autoimmune disease, I would say completely my experience would have been different. But for this specific illness, there's not much research. There's not many answers. So everybody across the board is pretty much struggling. The thing I will say though is that I've only found like one or two other like black people who have Lyme disease. So it's definitely not even a thing in the black community. It's like a super, like I said when I first got diagnosed and I was trying to find answers, I joined this online support group, and there's probably like 19,000 people in the support group, like across the world. And I was like, wow, there's like no black people in this group. And I was like, why is that? And that's kind of like what sparked me to like start looking into this, because I was like, there's literally no black people in the support group. Like, why is this like the whitest disease ever? But
You know what I wonder though?
They're being misdiagnosed.
Yeah, exactly.
Because a lot of the symptoms mask other diseases. So on my labs, I'm pretty much borderline for lupus. But it's because this illness will like mimic other diseases. They call it the great imitator because it imitates other diseases. Like it'll imitate lupus, MS, rheumatoid arthritis, ALS, and like Parkinson's. So a lot of people have all of the symptoms of all of those diseases like mixed in one. So they'll just be like, oh, you have this, this, and this, and then kind of send you on your way. But a lot of people will be on the medications for those illnesses and still be really sick.
Right, because it's not the right medication, right?
Right, yeah, they're not treating you for what you have. Like, you don't have a nerve disorder, you have a bacterial infection that has gone terribly wrong in your body.
I just wonder how many thousands of black people have this disease and have no idea that they have it.
Right. Like, I often wonder because, I mean, it's so easy to get. Like, it's not, like, you literally just existing and you can just have it. Like, you just get it. It's not, like, I mean, ticks are everywhere. You can also get it from mosquitoes. You can get it from fleas. Like, any type of bug bite can transmit it because what happens is, like, the ticks can latch onto animals, and they're so small. Like, some of them are, like, the size of a poppy seed. So you won't even notice that you were bit. And the thing is that, the scary thing is that sometimes you can have it in your body for years and not know. And then one day, like, your immune system goes crazy, and that's how you get sick. Because a lot of people don't even get sick right away. So I'm not really even sure how long I had it. That's the scary part, too. Like, I don't even know when I got it.
Yeah, it could have been longer than you would have thought.
Yeah, I could have been like a kid. And now they're doing research like kind of see if there's been some studies to show that it's passed in utero from like mom to baby, which is another scary thing. Like,
Wow.
because it's bacterial. So I mean, between in utero and like through breast milk. But there's not, the thing is, there's not much funding for research for this, so it's hard, you know, it takes so much time. It's not like other, you know, diseases where they raise a lot of money and they can get you answers quicker. Mm-hmm. With this, like, people don't really know about it, and then when they hear about it, they're like, oh, it's not that serious. So it's messy. And it's kind of frustrating.
I just wonder, how do we change the narrative? Because the way we get funding for fighting different diseases is very political. You know, how do you get people to care enough? You know,
it's funny. I saw this girl comment on a page about it, and she said she was having seizures. She had about 100 seizures in like 1 year.
Wow.
And when she told the emergency room doctor, like, oh, I have Lyme disease, they didn't treat her. But when she went the next time to the emergency room and said, no, I have borreliosis, which is like the bacterial name, they were like, oh, we're going to treat you right away. It's something about like the name. My husband says it too. He's like, it's something about the name. It has to, that needs a better name. Like Lyme sounds like fun, you know? It's like something you put in your beer. Like,
wow.
And he was like, it has to sound like aggressive, like cancer or AIDS. Like, you know, like it has to be like a better like name to it, and people have to know that it's aggressive. Because if people don't know that it can really like ruin your life, then they're not really gonna take it serious.
So there's an education that has to happen.
Yeah. There's education, they need better testing. Like I feel like, because also it's one of the like invisible diseases, right? So people don't usually see me when I'm at my work because I'm at home. Mm-hmm. When they see me out, it's usually on a good day that I have, which aren't many.
Right.
So, but they don't really see the illness, which is another issue.
And that's the problem, because if people can't look at you and see that you're sick, they don't believe that you're sick.
Oh, never.
You know, it's like if you
they
look
need
happy,
you to like be missing a leg or something. Like they need you to be just completely miserable.
Right.
But then about like half of the country has like some sort of chronic illness. So that means we're walking past people all day that have an illness that we don't see.
Yeah.
But people need to see it. Like they're like, I need you to look bad. Like I need you to look. It's kind of like, you know, like those commercials where they get you to donate. They're not going to put the people who don't quote unquote look sick. They're going to put the people who look sick for you to feel bad.
Right. And that's just terrible, right? I mean, if people are sick, we need to believe that they're sick. People shouldn't have to prove that they're sick to other people. It doesn't make sense.
Right. No, of course not. And it's like, most people who are chronically ill, I'm not going to walk around all day like screaming in pain, even though I'm in pain. But like, me screaming all day it's not realistic.
Right.
Like, that's the thing too. Most people who have chronic illness, they manage it very well, especially when it's something you don't see, because we have to, you know, go out in the world and be productive, which is another thing that we struggle with because we have like limited energy. So, it's like for this illness too, we can't even get disability because it's not really like a believed illness.
Really?
Yeah, like I'm denied disability.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, something has to change, you know, like whether it's education or something, but, you know, it can't continue like this.
Right, because also it's like working for me, like I can work from like home there are some people who are completely like bedridden, which is, or like they're in a wheelchair now. There's a lot of levels to like how severe you are with this, depending on what it affects in your body. But for us, we have to pay for our own treatments, and sometimes you have to try multiple treatments to see if they even work for you, because it depends. It's such a vague illness, like you don't really know. There's not one specific way. It's not like, oh, like I have this type of cancer, so I'm going to do chemo. It's not like straightforward like that. You have to like try and experiment with different treatments, and you have to pay for them because they're not covered by insurance. So it's like you have to pay for the treatments, you have to pay for the supplements, and like all these alternative therapies you have to do. So it's very expensive, you know. And then if you can't work, that doesn't help, you know. It's just like a domino effect of just keeping you sick.
Yeah, that's like, how's that gonna work? Because if
Right,
insurance isn't covering,
and I can't work because I'm literally too sick to go to work, how will I be able to pay for the treatment?
exactly.
To get better so I can go back to work.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
And
My
I remember
other, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, I had went to, one day I was on my way to work, and like my whole back, like it froze up, like I couldn't really move, like I lost like all my mobility. It was really weird. And I got to my job, and my boss like was like, what's happening? Like he couldn't, and I was like, I don't even know, like I don't know what's happening. And he called an ambulance, and I got to the hospital, and a black doctor walked in, and I was like so relieved, and I was like, oh my God, like he's gonna help me. Like you see a black doctor, and you're like, yes, like he's finally gonna believe everything I say, and he's gonna take me seriously. And my experience, because I know people like take this and they take it the wrong way, which has happened to me. My experience with black physicians has been worse than with white physicians. Because something happens where they think like everything's like a joke or something. It's very strange. Like they want to get very friendly. Like why the reason I'm there isn't really that serious. And they'll try to like crack jokes, and I'm like, no, like that's not what this is. Like I don't want to be your friend. I need you to help me here. So I've had like black physicians kind of dismiss me even more, which is really heartbreaking for me, because every time I've seen like a black doctor, I've gotten like so excited, like, oh my God, this is like my answer here. And they kind of just make it worse.
It's interesting that you had that experience.
Like, yeah, it's very strange. And at first I thought I was being dramatic, but then it happened every time. So I don't know like what that's about.
Did you ever feel a point in the doctor's office when you felt like you were being taken seriously?
No, never. Like not once.
So you always felt belittled, as if your pain didn't matter.
Yeah, always. Actually, every time. And the minute they see like I was on psychiatric medication, it's a wrap. They don't care. They blame everything on mental illness. Even though I've been dealing with this for like 11 years, like of course I'd be a little sad, right? Like that was literally all of my 20s.
Because I read something where they talk about how, you know, black women who are on medication, there's this tendency to dismiss them because, oh, you know, she's crazy because she has pills and she just wants more pills.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. They do that a lot, especially with black people. Like, they're like, oh, they're just a crackhead, or they're a drug addict or whatever, you know. But I mean, they prescribe people pain medications like nothing. Like they could say anything, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, it's like opioids, you know. Like they don't give us those things, never, because supposedly we're all drug addicts.
think about the opioid crisis. You know, it's like
Well, we're not
people,
even part of that.
right? People care so much about their suffering, but not ours.
Oh, never. Yeah, at all.
You know, for us, it was that hard war on drugs, and for them, it's we gotta help them.
Right. And I mean, it's like such a, not even just doctors, right? It's like our neighborhoods, like our housing. There's just like so many things, or so many factors that are part of it. It's, I don't know. I don't even know what the answer is.
Where do we
'Cause there's
go
just
from here?
so
Do you
many.
think?
I think about that all the time, and honestly, I don't even know. I don't know. It's just so much that has, like, so much has to be fixed, or just like completely destroyed and start over again. That's kind of how I feel. Like everything just, we need to like start from the bottom up again.
Yeah. I just wonder, like, is there even a solution? You know, I can't think of anything.
Because also what I noticed about like black doctors is that I feel like what happens is they get to medical school and they're around people who aren't black. You know, like they're being taught by people who aren't black. The textbooks are written saying that we don't feel pain, and I feel like that kind of like skews their thinking and their judgment. Because I'm like, if you're being taught by the same people who don't believe anything I say, and now you're working with them and you're up here at, you know, the class is different. It's like especially if you've come from, like it depends. So like if you come from like a low income family and now like you're up here with these doctors, like, you know, your attitude might change towards the people you grew up with, or I don't know. Like, I feel like that's something that happens. It's like not that they hate black people. It's more just like, well, I don't want to be associated with like those black people now. Like that's kind of like the vibe I got. It was like, girl, I know more than you. I know more than you now because I'm a doctor. It's like, what? Like, girl, I'm just coming here because I need help. Like, I don't need like your whole bougie like attitude. Like,
there's this elitism that exists, I think,
that's the word.
In the black community, where it's like there's this feeling that, oh, because I could do it, because I made my way out of poverty, that, oh, you can too. And if you don't, it's because you're lazy, it's because you're this, it's because you're that. And you get a lot of that even within the community.
Yeah, and I was like, girl, I'm coming to you because you look like me, and I thought like this would help me.
Yeah. You thought
and
she
that's
could relate.
like, you made me feel worse. Like, yeah, and I was like, wow, that wasn't what I was expecting at all. Because I see people all the time, especially people who aren't sick. They'll say like, all black everything. You know, like, you gotta support. Like, listen, I'm all for supporting my own, but sometimes it kind of feels like I'm being like wildly disrespected. So it's something, you know that. I don't know, it just feels bad because I'm like, damn, you know, like I'm trying to support my people here, and I felt like these are the people that would help me the most because, I mean, what if you want to help your own?
Right.
And I don't know, it kind of didn't work out that way.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I think about all this research that says, hey, if we just have more black doctors, if we just have more black police, then things would get better, right? Quote unquote, right. Diversity. But if the system is the same, how can you expect change?
If the schooling that they go to is the same, if the textbooks are the same, like, nothing's going to change. If you're reading a textbook that says you don't feel as much pain as that person right there, you're going to be like, well, she's lying. And you read all these studies where it's like black people are drug addicts and white people are, you know, not. And it's just, everything has to, as I said, everything has to be like burned down to the ground and like started over again.
Yeah. Because think
I mean, it's
about
like, look at the
with,
history of gynecology.
mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah,
they were
go
just
ahead.
experimenting on black women, like experimenting on black women's genitals with like no anesthesia. I'm sure there are plenty of doctors who deliver babies and they don't. And I mean, I know that. I know those who have said like during childbirth, like it was completely traumatizing because they felt like the doctors felt that they didn't need as much pain medication because they were like, oh no, she's just being dramatic, or she's fine, she's fine. Like, how are you gonna tell somebody that they're not experiencing pain?
During childbirth of all things.
Childbirth, like human is coming out of your body, and you're gonna tell this woman that she's not in that much pain, that she's being dramatic, or it doesn't hurt that much. Like, sir, how do you know? Have you had a baby before?
It's
It's
insane.
just insane. Like, that's like one of my greatest fears is literally having a baby. Because I'm like, I don't want to die, and like, I don't want to be. I've already been like not taken seriously in the doctor. I can't imagine that happening while I'm giving birth.
It's no wonder that black women have such high rates of miscarriage.
Oh, the stress and anxiety will literally kill you,
Yeah.
and will kill your unborn child. Because they can't relax. Like, it's like pregnancy for a lot of black women is just super stressful. Like, it's not a time. It's supposed to be a time that you enjoy, and it's supposed to be a fun time for you. But for many, it's not. It's like anything but that.
Mm. You know what I also thought about is the fact that, and I've experienced this, if you walk into a doctor's office and you tell people your profession, you might get treated better than if you just walk into the doctor's office and say nothing and be a regular person.
Ooh, boy, listen. Like, listen to me. That is so true. Like, that is so true. And you know what else too? It depends on your insurance.
Right.
If you on Medicaid, you ain't getting no treatment. They don't give a shit about you. You just a number. They just want to bill your insurance and move it along.
Mm.
Now, if you have like a union insurance, they'll tend to respect you more.
Yeah.
If you got an insurance that's paying, they'll respect you more.
Mm.
But yeah, that's true. Or if you know doctors, they'll take you more serious. Yeah. If you have
Yeah.
a doctor in your family that referred you, even better.
Yeah.
If you have a white person you could bring along, even better too.
Mm. I remember going to the doctor's office and it was like, as soon as I said, and I was in law school at the time, and as soon as I told the doctor that I was a law student, his whole tone changed.
He was like, "Oh, you ain't one of them ghetto Negroes." But
Exactly. He answered all my questions. He wasn't in a hurry to get rid of me anymore. He asked me about law school. He was suddenly really interested in me as a person.
right, yeah, because he associated you with like a higher class now,
Mm-hmm.
so you're more believable.
Yeah. And that's really unfortunate because it shouldn't be the case. You go to medical school, you're supposed to take care of people, period.
Right, you sign an oath, like you take an oath that says you will literally do no harm, right? And that goes out the window.
Yeah. It's sad. There shouldn't be this. We shouldn't have to persuade physicians that we're believable.
Right. I mean, I'm telling you something for a reason. Like, nobody wants to visit a doctor.
Right.
If I'm here, it's for a reason. I don't know.
Yeah.
I spend most of my days trying to think of what the answer is to all of this, but sometimes I just can't think about it.
But should it even be up to us?
I don't know. Good question.
It's the same thing with racism, right? I mean, we're not the ones who need to solve racism. The people who are racist need to solve it.
True. Yeah, this is true. It's funny because the last specialist I saw, he was when when he came into the room, like he was asking me, he was like, I kind of went over your history and I know like what you have going on. And when he saw that I was like super well versed in my illness and I know, the names for things and how certain medications affect things and all this stuff, he was like, oh, you should go to med school since you know so much.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, and I'm like, okay, like I don't know if that's really a compliment or because you sound like condescending right now.
Yeah, that was a backhanded compliment.
Yeah, it was like mad that I knew.
Yeah.
Like, he was like, I'm supposed to be teaching you these things, like, and I'm like, and I told him, I'm like, well, I mean, after a decade of nobody taking me seriously, I kind of had to take things into my own hands. And I mean, I couldn't really see his expression because everybody's messed up now, but it was just very like, I don't know. He was like, yeah, you should go to med school. And he's like, maybe the reason why we met is for me to make you go to med school.
What?
And I'm like, no, the reason we met is because I'm sick. Like, and the crazy thing is that I was referred to him by another doctor that I have in my family. So
that is wild.
My thought was, well, I'm gonna have to name drop so I can be taken seriously, and still, I got that. I was so angry. I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe this. I was like, I really was like, I'm name dropping, like, my family member who's a physician also, so this is gonna be like my only way to get, some help, and still nothing.
That reminds me of an interesting story. My brother is a doctor. One of my older brothers, he's a gynecologist, and my mom would go and see her gynecologist and get treated regular until she mentioned one day that her son was a doctor, and then the dude was like, "Oh, I'm not even going to charge you for this visit."
Wow.
Apparently, there's this thing where doctors don't charge family members of doctors. I don't know how true that is.
Yeah, I mean, it happens sometimes. Because my mom works in the medical field. So a lot of times when she says what she does, it's a different treatment too. And they're like, oh, no, don't worry about it. Like, what? Like, this ain't the bodega where you're just like taking a little freebie. Like,
yeah, that's
like, this is
really weird.
Yeah, it's strange. It's like a gang almost. Like, that's what I feel like. It's not like the cops. Like,
I never thought of them like a gang before.
Yeah, like in a way, I've seen so many. I don't know.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, it's like they pick and choose, who gets the better treatment. And it's kind of like if you have like a family member that's like in a gang, right? Like, you kind of get treated better. They're like, oh no, they good, they alright.
That's true.
The rest of these people, peasants, like peasants. They don't know anything. Just give them crumbs.
Oh man, I can't. I mean, it's good that we can laugh about it, but it's really not funny.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, I laugh about it to not cry, but
yeah,
because I can't lie, I spend a lot of time crying. Like, it's just at times I have to make a joke because it's like, damn, I can't believe this is my life.
Comedy is the best medicine. It really is, because
yeah,
if we don't laugh, we're gonna cry all the time, and that's no good for us.
Right, it's no good for your health at all.
Right,
it makes it worse. And it was crazy because that doctor that told me that I should go to med school, he was like, and I'm like, med school now? Like, I was like, if I was if I get healthier, trust me, I've thought about going to med school because I'm like, we need somebody, right? Might as well be myself. If I'm gonna, it starts with me, right? If I'm gonna make a difference, well, then I'll be the doctor that makes a difference, right? But I told him, I'm like, yeah, I have to be better. I have to be healthy to go to med school. Like, med school is not just some walk in the park. And he was like, yeah, like, you'll be done, before you're 40, you'll still be young. And he was like, and you know what he told me? Crazy. He was like, the paper is great too. Like, the money. And I was like, sir, you really getting hooked with me now? Like, that's what I was talking about, like, they're trying to be like friends. And I was like, so you just in it for the money? pretty much is what you just told me. Which, listen, I get it. People need to pay their bills. Like, we need money. But I was like, I didn't like the comment. Like, I didn't find it funny.
Yeah, that was wild and appropriate.
He was like, oh, yeah, that paper is great, too. And I was like, excuse me? Like, do you talk to your white patients like this? That's what I wanted to. I was like, I should ask that. I was like,
exactly.
Like, are you going to tell your white patient, like, yo, the paper is great, you should become a doctor? Yo, I was, after that one, I was done. I was done with him. Like, I was like, I'm done with all of them.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame you for not wanting to go back.
Yeah, and I'm like, first of all, if I was a doctor, the paper wouldn't be great. Because you know why? Like, I would take people seriously, and I'd probably still be poor. I would actually treat people and try to get them some answers. And I probably wouldn't even treat here. Like, I would obviously work in, like, the lower income neighborhoods. Or, like, even in the Caribbean. Like, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. I mean, they could use the talent for sure.
Right. So I was like, oh, I'd still be poor. I'd be in the same boat.
You know what's so sad in life is that sometimes when you're out there trying to do the right thing, you end up having to be poor.
Right.
And that's why a lot of people don't do the right thing, because it's not profitable.
Right. They don't want to stay in the same boat.
Right. But listen, any parting words? Where can people follow you if they want to follow you on social media?
Oh, I mean, everything is Negra Con Lyme. Lyme, Lyme. On Instagram. That's my website, too. The website is more like a blog where I kind of just share experiences. But, I mean, like, a parting words is, I will always say, I hate to say, like, advocate for yourself, because that's, like, what everyone says. But at the end of the day, like, if you feel something's wrong with you, there's something wrong. Like, don't let anybody, like a doctor, a surgeon, I don't care, like, if they work at, like, the best hospital in the country, if you feel that something is not right with you, with your body, with anything, like, you keep trying to find an answer. Like, don't just let them throw, like, some headache medication or an antidepressant at you when that has nothing to do with what you're, like, experiencing. Because that's what happened to me. I was treated for 10 years for depression when that wasn't even my issue. And I found out that the reason why I had headaches and I was depressed was because I had brain swelling.
Wow.
So, like, don't, like, I'll say it so I'm, like, blue in the face. Like, if you feel that what they're telling you isn't what it is, then it's not what it is. Like, I talk to so many people, like, every day who've gone through the same exact thing. Not just with even this illness, just, like, across the board. So it's like you keep, and it's so tiring to, like, keep going to different appointments or whatever. But with social media now, there's, like, so many communities you can find. So it's a little bit easier. Like, on Facebook, there's, like, so many support groups for, like, any illness you can think of. Like, that's where I started, and that's kind of where I got most of my answers, honestly. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, trust your gut. Like, super simple.
Yeah. And get those second, third, and fourth opinions, because
like,
it makes a difference.
And I know it's easier to say than, because I don't know, I mean, people's financial situation, insurance, it's a mess. But, like, there are people out there that can help you. It's like, it doesn't matter. There's always someone out there. Especially now, there's a lot more resources and people you can talk to who can help you out, as opposed to, like, back in the day when there was no social media.
Right.
But you know your body the best. You're living in it, literally. Like,
absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. I value it.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Most definitely.
All right. I want to once again thank Rhisa, aka Negra Con Lyme, for joining us on this episode and really guiding us through these issues, because this issue with regard to the medical field and the racism that goes on has to be addressed, has to be talked about. And once again, I really, really thank her for sharing her story, sharing everything that has happened with her. And I really hope that it will educate people, that it will edify people, that it will inspire them to action, inspire them to learn more and read more and pay attention to everything that is going on. I want to thank everyone for joining us once again on this episode of Race Wars, the Critical Conversations podcast. Once again, I will see you next time, and if nobody else is proud of you, I'm proud of you. God bless.